Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Eden Road podcast, where on today's show we're going to be previewing Brentford's game against Southampton down at the Gtech on Saturday. Joining me, I'm delighted to say, is Saints expert Martin Sanders from Football Martin. Martin, mate, thanks so much for taking the time to come on the pod.
No, you're welcome. You're welcome.
Good stuff, good stuff. Just before we get going, guys, remember to drop a comment down below with your thoughts ahead of the Southampton game. Subscribe to the YouTube and Spotify channels, and also give us a follow on our socials. That's at the Eden Road on Twitter and at Ealing Road Pod on Instagram. Martin, I think there's only really one place to start. We're recording this on Thursday morning, the day after a pretty exhilarating 5-3 win over Cardiff in the Carabao Cup. How was that for the emotions?
Oh yeah, it was unbelievable. I wasn't at the game, but I did a watch along and watched it live. But yeah, it was a really good game for some sort of. We've got some really good young talent at Southampton right now. Two young lads that they're on the verge of breaking through from our academy. Sam Amieo and a lad called Tyler Dibbling. They're names to remember, guys, because they are outstanding. Tyler Dibbling, it plays a little bit like a very young Matt Le Tissier. He wears his socks around his ankles, a bit like Jack Grealish, and he's got a real swagger about him. Very good on the ball, technically brilliant, goes past people. He's brave, he's strong. He's on the verge of getting in the starting 11. He had a wonderful pre-season, and he's really showcased himself last night with assists. He was all over the park, box to box, really, really good. But it was an opportunity to swap the 11 around. Russell made some big changes, Russell Martin did last night. Totally changed things around. Defensively, very lax in the way that we play, too casual on the ball at times. But the attacking third, which has been a real big problem in the Premier League in the opening two fixtures, we were outstanding in last night. Cameron Archer gets his first two goals for Southampton since signing from Aston Villa. Two really good goals. He took both of them well. He needed that because he needed to get himself off the mark. And I think these games are perfect we're at a stage now where we've got our squad settled pretty much. And there's players there now that want to be in the first team, pushing the manager to start in the first team. And that's what last night was all about. So it was really, really encouraging performance.
You mentioned the squad being settled. Before we get into the football specifically, and it was good that you scored 5 goals last night, because we are going to talk about maybe some of the offensive issues that Southampton have got. But in terms of the transfer business you've done, are you happy? Is there any more to come? What's the latest in terms of the big ones that I've been seeing? Aaron Ramsdale, obviously, I think is close to being confirmed. And Kyle Walker-Peters, is he staying? Is he going? Give us the latest, Martin.
But yeah, the big news last night, broken by Fabrizio Romano, the transfer guru, was that Aaron Ramsdale will become a Southampton player. This one's come about, but it's been rumbling for a little while. We've been linked with Aaron Ramsdale. We actually did have a goalkeeper, Mike, coming in at the weekend called Justin Bilo, who's a Dutch keeper playing at Feyenoord. He travelled over and was having a medical on Monday at Southampton. I was on a podcast at the weekend with a journalist in Holland, and he told me he had a lot of injury issues. He had a calf problem, he'd broken his wrist, and he missed a lot of football. And there were some major concerns for me around this. And then Monday, I heard that the Wolves deal for Aaron Ramsdale collapsed because they wanted Aaron Ramsdale, and Southampton have acted quickly, and they've gone in and got him because this isn't a loan either. They're going to actually purchase Aaron Ramsdale for a fee of around £18 million. There's $1 million add-on if they stay up as well, and there's some performance-related bonuses. So I think this is a brilliant bit of business, an area that Southampton are really, really weak in, the goalkeeping department with the injury to Gavin Bazunu. So I'm like, I think any Southampton fan should be absolutely delighted that we've got a top class England goalkeeper coming in. This is an England goalkeeper. He's highly, highly rated. So delighted with this. Should get over the line today. Kyle Walker-Peters, Mike, is a big one. It's a major concern because he's entered the final year of his contract. And they were very clear last year that they will not allow players to enter their final year of their contract without doing business. They allowed Stuart Armstrong and Shay Adams to enter final years, and a pair of them both left for free at the end of the season just gone. Kyle Walker-Peters is probably the prize asset, you would say, or one of the prize assets within this squad. The biggest issue is he's been Southampton's best player in the opening 2 games. He's been our most creative player from left back. He's playing left back at the moment. I'll talk to you about how we're lining up, but Carl's been outstanding. I wouldn't let him go right now because I feel we don't have anywhere near anybody as good as him at fullback either side at this moment in time. So, and the other big news, Mike, today, and it's going to rumble. Will he be in potentially for the weekend? Could do. Is our ex-captain James Ward-Prowse. It's been spoken about all week, and people I talked to. This one may happen. Russell Martin tried to distance himself from it in the press conference ahead of the Cardiff game, but from the people that you talk to down here, Southampton are very interested in James Ward-Prowse again, and I believe that he's quite interested in us as well. So it'll be interesting to see if that does come off. I don't think we're massively in need of a central midfielder. I think we're a little bit lightweight, out wide and up front, but who knows what could happen before the game on Saturday.
Would James Ward-Prowse, would you say, be an upgrade on your current? Well, I would say 6, but Ward-Prowse he's a bit of everything really. He's kind of a mix of a 6 and an 8, isn't he?
Yeah, I tell you what, he played really well in the 8 under Nathan Jones in the season that we got relegated from the Premier League. He was really good, scored a lot of goals. The thing about our midfield at the moment is we play. Flynn Downs is outstanding. He will always start in the central midfield. He plays in the 6. He breaks play up, and he's been really, really good for us. A massive reason why we got promoted, and we've got him in on a permanent now. It's who you pitch either side of him. In the opening 2 Premier League games, Joe Aribo's played one side, and Will Smallbone's played the other side. Will Smallbone come through our academy, had a fairly decent season last year for us. The problem is they're a little bit lightweight, the pair of them. They don't influence the game massively. And that's probably my biggest concern with the 2 of them. James Ward-Prowse will be an upgrade on both of them. They've brought in a midfielder called Mateus Fernandez, who played last night, scored and assisted. He looked really good, but he's 20 years old. This is my biggest concern. I still think to survive in the Premier League, you need players that are experienced in the Premier League that can step up when needed, get a foot in when needed. James Ward-Prowse would absolutely give you all of that and a load more. Knows the football club inside out. A lot of fans would love to see him back, but there's a massive part of the fan base that don't want to see him back because they thought he jumped ship when he did last season. But let's be honest, he stuck with Southampton through a lot, at some really tough times, and he wanted to go and play at the European Championships, and absolutely rightly so. He took an opportunity to play in the Premier League at his age, where he's at his career. It would have been really difficult to stay in the Championship for him. Others did. He didn't. But yeah, a lot of fans are real split on that one.
Just before we get into the football, Martin, one Southampton player to look out for this season.
One player. I think it's hard to put out one name for me. I think certainly if he's still in the door, he's been brilliant in the Premier League before. Kyle Walker-Peters, we all know him. I think he's outstanding. He will get bought by someone, snapped up by someone, no doubt about it. But somebody that you don't know about, or somebody that you want to keep an eye on. I said it when I went on the overlap the other week. Tyler Dibbling, I think, is outstanding. I think he's a young talent. He's 18 years old. He's come through our academy. He won't be a name familiar to many of you, but he is a really, really good player. One to look out for. Absolutely. I could pull you a couple out, but I definitely think he's the pick of the bunch right now in our academy that's going to break through. He will break through and he will score goals in the Premier League. I'm convinced of it.
Good stuff. Good stuff, Mike. Let's move on to the football. I've got here, my question was, are you pleased with the start to the season? Obviously, 2 back-to-back 1-0 defeats. You dominated Newcastle. Should have won that game. Easily had enough chances to win the game. But it was a weird one because I was watching the game against Forest and, all the possession, but Forest were pretty dominant in that game. So I would have thought off the back of the Newcastle game, going to St. James's Park on the first day of the season and dominating in the way you did, that you'd go into the game at St. Mary's, Boyd, and maybe nick a win against Forest, who were kind of in a relegation fight last season. So what are your overall impressions on the first 2 games?
I was really surprised at the Newcastle performance. I thought we were outstanding at Newcastle. I thought we were really, really good. I went up there, travelled 7 hours to get up there, 7 hours to get back, did it over 2 days. One of the best away days I've ever had, by the way. It was Mike. It was immense, absolutely immense. But Saints, I think it shocked a lot of people. But I think that was a lot down to Newcastle. I think Newcastle didn't put Saints under any press whatsoever. They let them play football, didn't really start the game. And by the time Newcastle was starting to build into the game, Fabian Schär got sent off for that clash with Ben Brereton Diaz. Controversial as it was, it rallied the fans. The noise, it become a real cauldron in St. James's Park, like it can do. And they really roared their team on because their fans are just immense, aren't they? They scored just before half-time, an error from our goalkeeper. And we never really looked like scoring, though we piled the pressure on and had loads and loads of the play. We just couldn't score. We were really toothless up front, and that was a major concern for us. We didn't score. We went into the Forest game at home, which I was at the weekend. They've changed St Mary's around. The away fans, if you're travelling down this season, have been moved to another part of the stadium, the south part of the stadium. And the noise was good before. I thought the fans really turned up. It was a wet start to the afternoon. And it was the same starting 11 that he started with at Newcastle. However, he went without an out-and-out 9 at home. So we played Ben Brereton Diaz wide left, Adam Armstrong played wide right, and he played the three midfielders, but we're not really even a false 9. Joe Aribo stepped into it at times. But we had one shot of goal on target that come from the left back. That was Carl Walker-Peters. And we just weren't good enough. Forest totally outplayed us. Alanga caused us loads and loads of problems. Gibbs White had the freedom in midfield. He totally dictated play at times. And we just weren't good enough. Elliot Anderson in midfield, I've got to say, he's a really good signing for Nottingham Forest. He looked good in midfield. And we just couldn't get near him. We just couldn't get near him. And they deserved the victory, and they could have won it by more in the end. It was a very odd performance from us. He rang a few changes as the game went, but just couldn't get in the game. We didn't ever look like scoring. And I think that's the biggest concern, Mike, at the moment. We look really toothless in attack, and he's going to have to rectify that really quickly. He doesn't have loads of options out wide. Cameron Archer's coming as a striker. Will he get enough goals to keep us in the Premier League? I'm unconvinced at this moment in time. He scored 2 against Cardiff, a side that made a lot of changes last night and had a lot of academy graduates on the field. So, yeah, it remains to be seen what we do in the remainder of the window before this game. But, yeah, a little bit lightweight in the final third for me.
You mentioned the final third issues, and obviously Cameron Archer scored 2 against Cardiff last night. Adam Armstrong kind of perennially talked about as maybe a championship striker who hasn't been able to cut it in the Premier League. Ben Diaz is a different one, because I know he at Sheffield United last season when he came on loan, he was. I think if you ask Sheffield United fans, they'd probably tell you that he was their best performer in terms of that second half of the season when he did come. But again, in terms of strikers that are proven goal scorers at Premier League level, I was surprised to see Southampton not maybe splash the cash on someone bigger, as opposed to obviously the signings that you've done are very shrewd and you're not spending too mumuch money. But in terms of maybe getting a goal scorer who will score you goals in the top flight, are you worried that the window is shutting is shutting tomorrow as we record this on Friday, and there isn't a sort of out and out goal scorer in your side that that you can do it in the Prem?
Yeah, Mike, it massively concerns me, to be honest, because I think for any team to survive in the Premier League, we all know you need a really good goalkeeper. We're going to get that. You need a really good core of experienced players, which we're a little bit lightweight on. And you need somebody that can lead the line, that can score goals. And I don't know where those goals come from at this moment in time. I would have quite liked to see Amanda Brozier from Chelsea. He had a really good spell here. Somebody that, whether you could get him on loan, someone that can play off the last man, that can run the channels, that's big, that's powerful, knows where the goal is. He was brilliant in his period of time down here. I think we need somebody that can find the back of the net. Cameron Archer will score goals, but you need different options. I have a horrible feeling they're hoping that Ross Stewart is going to get himself fit and become the saviour. And I'm not convinced that Ross Stewart is the answer. He played a lot of League One games and scored a lot of goals at Sunderland. He played half a championship season and looked good. But this is a big step. We all know that the step from the Championship to the Premier League is massive. From League One to the Premier League is huge. Whether he can get himself fit enough to lead our line remains to be seen. Apparently, he's a very good striker. Everybody raves about him. But he came in the door a summer ago, and we've seen nothing of him at all. He trains a bit, gets injured, on the sidelines, trains a bit, get injured, and we'd never see anything of him. I hope we're not resting everything on him, hoping that he's on the verge of being fit again, hoping that he is going to be the man to lead the line, because I just think it's a massive, massive risk. Obviously, financial fair plays at play as well, and we're trying to balance the books and not spend stupid amounts of money. But I still think someone in on loan that can score goals would be really important for me, Mike.
In terms of Russell Martin's football, very easy on the eye. Obviously, lots of possession against against Forest, dominated the game against Newcastle, like we spoke about. And there's been a lot made of managers' sort of willingness or reluctance to adapt to style or to adapt their style of play to kind of suit the Premier League. For example, Company at Burnley, which ultimately led to probably their relegation last season. There's talk of Ange at Spurs, whether his playing style was a bit too stubborn at times, whether he needs to adapt. Can or will Russell Martin adapt his football in the Premier League? Because I scrolled through a Saints journalist replies to his assessment of the game against Forest, and there were a lot of people in the replies saying he needs to be a bit more flexible in terms of how we want to play in the Prem.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's a really fair assessment. He's changed the system in the terms of how he sets up. So he's trying to make us more compact, because we leaked a stupid amount of goals last year. 64 goals we leaked in the whole season, including that playoff campaign. He made us a lot harder to beat in the playoffs against West Bromwich Albion and Leeds in the final by playing a 5 at the back. So he play 3 centre backs. Jack Stevens, who's a club captain, sits in defence but can play in the John Stones, sort of sits in front of the back 4. Not convinced he's the best at doing that, but he does do it. But in terms of like the style of play, still continuing to play out from the back. Not had a goalkeeper to do it till now, and he was still trying to do it with a goalkeeper that doesn't want the ball at his feet. It's absolutely bizarre how the ball ends up back with Alex McCarthy in the game at Newcastle was beyond me at that stage in the game. We're 3 minutes from half time, if that, and the ball's ended up back at the goalkeeper. He didn't even look before he played the pass. But you have to adapt, and sometimes you need to go forward a bit quicker. Try and get somebody in midfield that's willing to take the ball Flynn downs and get him on the half turn and go forward quicker. But that's all down to the centre-backs playing the ball a bit quicker. We've become really pedestrian and slow at times. We did it against Forest, and if we play like we did against Forest, I got on record and said it on the Total Saints podcast this week, we will not get a point at home playing that way, because you just will not score any goals. You have to turn it back to front so much quicker, and he will have to adapt quickly. I fear he probably won't, to be honest. I think he's quite stubborn in the way that he plays. I think he's willing to change system, but I think he's going to have to try and turn it back to front a lot quicker than he's doing right now. It's all well and good keeping the ball, but against the top sides, Man United, Liverpool, Chelsea, Arsenal, Man City, they press you. And that's the one thing that Nottingham Forest did at the weekend against Southampton. And if Brentford do the same against Southampton at the weekend, press, they will put us under a huge amount of pressure. And if you can't move the ball quick enough, you've got a problem.
Well, I said it on our podcast this week, this fixture that we've got coming up on Saturday kind of reminds me of when we played Burnley quite early on last season. And It was very much the same. Everyone was kind of criticising. It was a bit further on, so there was a bit more evidence in the kind of claims that Vince Kompany might need to adapt his playing style. But Burnley were persistent on playing it out from the back, and we scored a couple of goals just from them giving it away in sloppy areas. So I do think it will be a good game. We'll move on to the game soon, but just kind of from scrolling through some of the replies on Twitter and kind of just trying to get the lowdown on what's going, or what the fans at Southampton feel like. I saw a lot of negativity. And we're only a couple of games in. What are your thoughts just on the kind of negative stuff that's going around in terms of Southampton?
Our fan base can be really, really toxic at times. I find it a lot of panic buttons here. I think it's probably like with any football club. You've lost your first 2 games. People are really disillusioned with the transfer window. Still don't feel we haven't got a striker. They were unhappy about the goalkeeping department. The football club have put it right to get the goalkeeper in. They've sorted that out. And remains to be seen what business we do in the final few days of this window before the weekend. But I think there's some warning signs. I think the fans expected a lot more at home, certainly at the weekend. And I think everyone was bitterly disappointed. They put in 3 brand new fan zones at St Mary's, encouraged people to get there early. People come in, they turn up, have a drink. Everyone's quite buoyant. Families turn up in the family fan zones. I've never seen the ground so busy before a game. There's this massive expectation around the game against Forest. People look at Forest, they've only just stayed up last year. And the performance was so abject and so poor. I just think it made everybody walk away really, really negative. And it's typical football fans, isn't it? People can get negative early. It's still the second game. International breaks coming, which would probably worry me a little bit, because we're going to Brentford where traditionally we don't do very well. It's not a great away day for us. You wouldn't want to go into the international break with another defeat without scoring a goal yet, I think that would be a little bit of a concern for me. Adam Armstrong's took a little bit of criticism. He was the talisman last year, scored 24 goals. Prior to that in the Premier League, I've gone on record and said it, he only scored 4 in 2 seasons. Remains to be seen whether he can step up and do it in the Premier League, and he'd be desperate for his first goal. But playing wide on the right touchline, getting chalk on his boots, he isn't going to score a goal out there, unfortunately. Same with Ben Brereton, Diaz. Want to see these two playing higher up the field, down through the middle, getting on the end of midfielders' passes, because at the moment they're not going to score any goals playing how we're doing. No chance.
Is it time to see more of the summer signings? Obviously, you mentioned Mateus Fernandes was on the score sheet last night in the Carabao Cup. Do you expect some of those players that maybe haven't started some of the league games to come in for the Brentford match?
Yeah, I think there's a couple knocking the door now. Mateus Fernandes will definitely be one of those. Leslie Ugochukwu come in from Chelsea on loan. He had a good performance last night in midfield. I don't think his start against Brentford at the weekend, but I think he's a really good player. Maybe in the sort of the games where we're really going to struggle to get hold of midfield, maybe him and Flynn Downs would be quite a good partnership. I thought last night watching him. I think he looks a good player. I think Fernandes, I don't think he'd make masses of changes. I think it'd be a tweak to the system. I think if he will play into Brentford's hands, going with a 5 at the back, in my opinion, and a few Brentford fans I spoke to feel the same. I still think he needs to try and get us a little bit further up the field. I still think he's going to need somebody that's going to hurt the defence. He needs somebody that's going to sort of be the man up front that's going to have the ball stick at 9. Whether he does that, but uses Cameron Archer to do it, I'm not convinced that he's that sort of player. I quite like to see Ben Brereton Diaz play a little bit more central. I think he could definitely have an influence because he's got a good touch. He's big and he's strong. I quite like the look of him from what I've seen of him. So I think it'd be more of a change of personnel. Is whether he's got the real balls to throw Tyler Dibbling in now, because he's the one probably that he might just throw in for this game. He's the one that looks like a proper player. But he'll play a big role at the weekend, whether that's from the bench or he starts. I don't think there'll be major changes, but I think it'd be more of a system change than anything else, and you go with a flat back 4.
Okay, let's move on to the game itself then. Who in the Brentford team worries you, or who would you take in the Southampton team at Brentford?
Well, everyone kept on about Ivan Toney earlier on in the season. I like Ivan Toney. Be interested to get your thoughts on him in a minute. Obviously, that's rumbled on all season long, isn't it? But I think Brentford as a side, it'd be a tough side for us to play against. The 2 centre backs are always solid. You always seem to have 2 solid centre backs. I've not looked all your fixtures yet. So I don't know who's played there the first 2 games. But I think you're always a hard side to break down. What would really concern me at the weekend is how do we hurt you, and what are our weapons to get down the side of your fullbacks and start causing you problems. I do fear. Is it Wissa? I always enjoyed watching. I think he causes a few problems at the weekend. Somebody I would have liked to have seen, that's for sure. Been a massive upgrade on some of our sort of attacking third players, that's for sure.
I was going to ask for the score prediction, but just in terms of we've spoken about it on our podcast in terms of the kind of game that we're expecting. Obviously, you've mentioned it was a bit too pedestrian at times against Forest. I think I read a stat somewhere that you averaged a shot every 90 passes, which was like double the average of your championship season last year. And we kind of spoken about it. We think it's going to be a good game just because of the way Russell Martin likes to play and the way that we've been playing in our first 2 games. Maybe probably not the one against Liverpool because we were slightly more compact and we set up in a bit more of a defensive shape. But certainly the game against Palace, our front 3 was a hell of a lot of fun to watch. And it seems like it's gonna make for a pretty open game on Saturday. So what kind of game are you expecting at the Gtech this weekend?
I think it'd be a good game. I think there'll be some goals in it. I worry a little bit going into it. If I'm totally honest, I think you'll cause us all sorts of problems. To be fair, I saw a bit of the Palace game. I only saw the highlights and looking ahead at the time. I was thinking that we've got to play you in a couple of weeks' time. Like I say, your front 3 could cause us all sorts of problems. I'm not convinced we'll walk out of Brentford at the weekend with anything out of the game. I have this horrible feeling that we're going to the international break without a point on the board, and then everybody's going to literally hit the panic button because we play Man United the other side of the international break. So it is really tough. For me as a fan, I watch all the games. I think it's you have to walk out of there with something, a point. I take a point right now. I think we need to walk out of Brentford with something at the weekend. I don't think we will. I think you'll beat us, unfortunately. A lot of Southampton fans are going with a 1-0 win. I actually think that Brentford could cause all sorts of problems to us. I'm actually going to go with I think we score. We get our first goal of the season. Adam Armstrong, he needs a goal. I'm going to go with a 3-1 victory to Brentford. Sorry, Saints fans.
Well, for our sake, I hope that's true, but for your sake, maybe not. But I think definitely going into the international break with some form of points tally would be very positive, especially if you get a couple of names over the line or manage to hold on to Walker Peters tomorrow. I'm hoping that one of the promoted teams can buck the recent trend. I was listening to a podcast yesterday about the kind of difficulties of coming up these days. It was slightly different for us 4 seasons ago, but with the kind of with the scattergun spending of clubs like Chelsea, and how it seems like a lot of teams now are comfortable with putting a lot of money on big name players, it does make it more difficult for the teams coming up. And I know that Ipswich have kind of strengthened all over the pitch in terms of the signings they've made, and so have Southampton, to be fair. I feel like Leicester are maybe the ones that haven't done as much spending, but maybe that's partly because they were in the Premier League for so long. So it's almost like I heard Jamie Carragher speaking about that kind of mentality and what that does for a promoted team, knowing that you are a Premier League side. But you could say the same for Southampton. But regardless, let's hope for a good game on Saturday, Martin. I think that would be a nice place to wrap up the podcast. Thank you so much for joining. The Ealing Road podcast will be back for a full-time show after the Southampton game. Just before we go, remember to drop a comment down below. How are you feeling ahead of Southampton? Who worries you in their side? Will the Ivan Toney situation be resolved? Let's fucking hope so. And just before we go, remember to subscribe to the YouTube and Spotify channels, and also give us a follow on our socials. That's at the Ealing Road on Twitter and at Ealing Road Pod on Instagram. Martin, it's been an absolute pleasure, mate. Good luck for Saturday.
Thank you.